Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm super grateful. I have a great interview with Erich Pratt from Gun Owners of America today. It is a long interview because we talked about a lot of stuff, but you're going to want to watch the entire thing so that you can stay informed. And there's some key information at the end, so stick with me all the way through. And if you haven't already subscribed to GunGuyTV, please do subscribe, click the bell if you're on YouTube so that you can get notifications, and please like, and I do urge you to share. We're trying to get the channel to grow, and the only way I can do it is if you share the video, so please do. I'll also let you know that we do have a great sponsor, and that is Sportsman's Guide. Sportsman's Guide has been sponsoring GunGuyTV for probably about 2 years. Whether you're shopping for hunting gear or shooting gear or stuff for outdoor adventures and outdoor sports, check out Sportsman's Guide. All right, now, let's go talk to Erich Pratt from GOA. Erich, thank you very much for joining me on the show today. I'm very grateful to have you here. I know you guys are extremely busy. In fact, before you even say a word, let me just make sure people understand just how busy you are. Here you go. I just looked on your website this morning, and this is just some of the stuff you're doing. You're still fighting over the bump stock. Thank you. There's all this other stuff you're doing. This is the rest of them. This is just a short list. There's more on your website. So I'm just going to open this up to you because, frankly, I could sit here and ask you questions about what's going on nationally, but you know, and I don't. So give us kind of an update on the nationwide fight for our Second Amendment rights. What is going on?
Absolutely. Well, Joel, thanks so much for having me on. This is great to be back with you, and thank you for all you're doing. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Certainly, I think gun owners know that the Biden administration is attacking us on many fronts. For starters, there's the homemade gun ban. That's aimed at stopping activity that really has been legal since before the Constitution. Basically, the ATF regs in this regard will make it so that you'll need to pass a background check to purchase, say, an 80% lower, because now they're being deemed as readily convertible to a firearm. Of course, that's not going to stop bad guys from making their own guns. So this is only going to hassle law-abiding gun owners. But, you know, that reg, the comment period actually ends on August 19th. So it's really important for gun owners to be active in contacting the ATF and submitting their comments in opposition to this. But I'll say this, you know, the gun ban aspect that I just mentioned got most of the press. But really, it's not all that this regulation does, because it also imposes registration. And this is not surprising, because the Biden administration and the anti-gun left, I mean, they want to track all guns. They want to register guns. These regs say that gun dealers cannot dispose of the 4473 forms and that they have to turn them in when they go out of business. Now, currently, they're required to retain them for 20 years, but then they can dispose of them as they see fit. Well, this reg is going to change that and greatly facilitate gun owner registration. And then there's another form of registration in this bill, or regs, which I think are even less known, but the rule allows the ATF to require serialization for any part that's externally visible and houses a, quote, fire control component. You know, this is something that we did a Minuteman moment video on the GOA YouTube page about this. But basically what this comes down to is this. It means, you know, let's say you have a Glock. Up to 16 possible serial numbers could be required for various parts on your Glock pistol. So any update or upgrade that you want to do, whether it's a new slide, whether it's a barrel, whether it's getting additional magazines for your Glock or any other firearm, that could require you to go to a dealer, pass a background check, fill out a 4473 form. And again, at the end of the day, all those 4473 forms are eventually now going to end up at the ATF. All of this, of course, is going to have a tremendous chilling effect on the exercise of our Second Amendment rights. So it's really important for gun owners. You know, if they go to our website at gunowners.org, we have a lot of information there on this, but also we make it very easy. We give people kind of a standardized text that they can use to start their own comments in opposition. And we encourage people to take that and then, change it up a little bit, put their own intro. But it's really important. We've won battles like this before. You might remember the green tip ammo regulation, things like that ATF eventually withdrew. We've won these kind of battles before, even under anti-gun administration. So it's really important for people to speak out on this.
I mean, what next? Is it the spring? California, for example, I'm in San Diego, California. California wants to do everything from springs to triggers to everything else and call them precursor parts. Do you feel like that's the direction the Biden administration is going?
Well, absolutely. See, and this is what's at stake here is the fact that ATF is bypassing Congress. I mean, let's face it, Biden is frustrated because he can't get gun control passed through the Congress. Thank God for that. But now he's just issuing decrees like a dictator. And so absolutely, you can foresee this being a very incremental approach. So first they start with, parts that are externally visible, and then, they'll move on from there. Even just last week, we heard from Biden himself that he considers assault weapons to also include 9mm handguns. In other words, the point is that they will never be content with whatever level of gun control they've imposed upon us. We know what their end game is, and it's the total eradication of the exercise of our Second Amendment rights. There's even been amendments, constitutional amendments that have been proposed. Thankfully, they never went anywhere, but to repeal the Second Amendment. That is the agenda of the anti-gun left, whether they can do it, by repealing the Second Amendment or doing it piecemeal. But ultimately, it comes down to this question: can a government agency bypass Congress to make law? Can an agency ignore the Second Amendment to infringe upon gun rights? And obviously the answer is no, but this is why we're involved, because if no court ever stops them, it would be the same as if, say, police never pulled people over for speeding. Nobody would ever obey the posted speed limits, right? Well, that's exactly what we're fighting here. And, we've already seen the ATF ignore the Constitution. What we were just talking about, the proposed ban on homemade firearms, which they pejoratively call ghost guns. We've seen their scheduled ban on as many as 40 million pistol brace firearms. They started with 500,000 bump stocks and bump stocks owners. Now they're affecting as many as 40 million gun owners who have braced firearms. This is why slapping down the ATF on bump stocks is so important. They can't be allowed to continue ignoring Congress and making up the rules that run roughshod over the Bill of Rights.
Essentially, they are just a regulatory agency under the executive branch. And you're right. Congress makes laws. They can establish regulations based upon what the laws say. I had Dan O'Kelly on the show just recently. I don't know if you know Dan. He's a retired ATF guy, and he's in court battling with the ATF on a regular basis. And it was Dan in court that finally got a judge to rule that an AR-15 lower was not a firearm because it did not fit the federal law's description of what a firearm is. Well, if an AR lower is not a firearm, then neither is an upper, neither is a bolt carrier group, in fact, frankly, neither is the frame of your Glock. And this is what they're trying to fix. The problem with it is, as you said, ATF is just redefining their definition of what the law says. They're not changing the law. That has to be done through Congress.
Exactly.
How do you feel the courts are going to look at this sort of freehand recoloring outside the lines that ATF has a tendency to want to do?
Well, it's always a tough battle when you're in the courts because you're dealing with lifetime appointments of people who, for most reasons, can never be recalled. So I'll just say up front, this is why we spend the bulk of our resources and time even working to prevent bad laws from passing in the first place. And that's why we spend so much time on elections and affecting the Congress and the state legislatures. But with that said, I mean, obviously, there are bad laws that get passed. There's, the executive actions that, a Trump or a Biden does that affect gun owners, and impose upon our rights. And so that's why we're really excited about this bump stock case. I mean, we won in March. A 3-judge panel in the Sixth Circuit. Ours was the only case in the nation, by the way, that has won so far against the bump stock ban. Of course, that upset the Biden administration, which is opposing us on this. So they're challenging it now to the full en banc Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. But, we've got a lot of momentum going our way. I mean, just in the last week, you mentioned this earlier, the NRA has come alongside, and they've put an amicus brief now in favor of striking down that ban. 18 state attorney generals. This is huge. They also submitted a brief. So there is tremendous support, plus the fact that a lot of our case dealt with deference. That is, does an agency like the ATF deserve deference where they can, make up their own thing when it could result in people going to jail? And I'm kind of trying to simplify this and not sound too, lawyer speak. But this is a big issue, and it's an issue that a majority on the Supreme Court want to deal with in our favor. So if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court, we're very excited about the potential for this. And we think this could be as significant as Heller and the McDonald cases before us.
This bump stock, if you ultimately are victorious, which I suspect you will be, particularly if it goes to the Supreme Court in the bump stock ban, how does that, you just mentioned the whole deference thing, how does that, or does that actually affect a president's ability to continue to weaponize the ATF against the Second Amendment?
Well, here's the dirty little secret. It's going to affect a lot more things than just gun rights. It's going to restrain a lot of these out of control agencies that are just trampling our rights in different areas. But, my issue, my cause célèbre, obviously, is the Second Amendment. So we're very excited that we can be part of this, and because this will have a tremendous restraining effect upon what ATF is doing. And we've just mentioned in passing the pistol brace firearm reg, but that's the other thing that's looming out there, where the comment period ends in September. Stabilizing braces, as they were invented to ultimately to help military veterans who were disabled so that they could better hold firearms. The ATF said it was legal for years. Now they've done an about face, and the ATF wants to treat them as NFA items or, SBRs. So, of course, millions of these are either going to have to be destroyed, surrendered, or registered. Of course, criminals aren't going to have to do that. But, this is just yet another example of how anti-gun Democrats are famous for inventing regs that will entrap law-abiding citizens while doing nothing to put real bad guys behind bars. So the comment period for that ends September 8th. That's very important. Again, people can go to our website to get information on that, and also submit their comments by going to our website and going to following the proper link. But this, I think we need to fight this on all different fronts. So we need to have people submitting the comments. We're also working with congressmen to submit comments, but we're also fighting this in the courts, for example, through the bump stock case. And I tell you, Joel, if these two regs that we just talked about, if they go into effect, we're already lining up the plaintiffs to challenge them. And there's so many aspects to these two regs. I mean, they could result in, I don't know, 6, a dozen different lawsuits, because there's just so many different individual things. But that's something that at Gun Owners of America and our foundation, GOF, we're working on in preparation in case these things actually go into effect.
One of the things I wanted to get your thoughts on, first of all, since we're talking about all this ATF stuff, what are your thoughts on where the David Chipman nomination is going? I noticed a couple of stories in the news. It seems like he's kind of imploding, but I don't think we can take the pressure off. But here's the things I saw in the news. This was on Breitbart. David Chipman may have helped China cover up a mass stabbing. And this, the source of the story was actually Fox News, surprisingly. You know, I expect to see this stuff on Breitbart, but I don't always expect it to see it on Fox. So I guess my question to you would be, what's going on with that nomination, and how are we doing?
I think we're in good shape. Maybe compared to when his name was first put forward, we never could have foreseen that a few months later we would be in this good shape. His nomination's in big trouble, Joel. For starters, Gun Owners of America has generated tens of thousands of emails and phone calls into the Senate, especially into key swing Senate offices. I mean, we're talking about like Manchin in West Virginia, King in Maine, Tester in Montana. And of course, we were also doing the same drill in some of the squishy Republican Senate offices before we were sure where they stood on it. Now, every Republican has come out against him. Of course, we haven't been alone in this. We've been joined by other groups and YouTubers like yourself in rallying the grassroots. So this has been fantastic, the momentum and the uniting in opposition. And so far, the Senate leadership has said they don't have the votes. I mean, remember, if they have every Senate Democrat, they can approve anybody they want to. They have the votes to do it. They do not have the votes for Chipman. We at GOA, we produced a video on our YouTube page where we interviewed Tom Jones from the American Accountability Foundation. And he was the first one that I knew of to expose Chipman's racism. So we helped get that word out. And boy, were we excited then to see Senator Mitch McConnell, to his credit, recently used that information to really shove it down the Democrats' throats. I mean, McConnell is basically put the gauntlet down, telling Biden to pull this pick, to withdraw the Chipman nomination. The Republicans on the Judiciary Committee are telling the Senate Democrats, we need to have more hearings on this guy and go through a lot of these, what are now allegations about, EEOC activity, which basically is a way of saying discrimination and racism. So all to say, Joel, this nomination is in trouble. And I mean, we haven't even touched on where he stands on guns. He would be the most anti-gun pick ever put forward. I mean, honestly, putting him in charge of the ATF would be like putting a child killer in charge of a daycare center. It's not going to end well.
What my hope is from that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, my hope is from that is that as gun owners, we can understand that individually we can't do as much as we can if we just join together and stop picking on each other and let's fight the fight wherever we find it. I'm starting to see more groups start to do that. Am I accurate in that assumption?
Certainly right now, at this point in time, that is happening. And I do think that's very exciting. I think where sometimes we run into issues where we don't see that. Like, for example, with the bump stocks, if you have a group that has really hitched their wagon to a certain candidate like Trump, it makes it very difficult for them when that candidate or that elected official then does something that restricts our rights. And I think that's what you saw happening, say, in the bump stock case. But right now, there's near unanimity, and it is exciting to see. And, back to the bump stocks, I mean, I just can't overstate how significant that is, not only having the NRA, but the 18 state attorney generals that sends a huge message. And we're just so very excited that this is picking up steam, and that in the next few months, I mean, the oral arguments are going to be in October. Where our attorney will go. And I tell you what, our attorney, I was there in the courtroom when he did it, when he made the oral arguments previously. He was fantastic. And we just really look forward to this in October, and getting some good decisions that are really going to restrain the ATF and further frustrate the Biden administration.
I think the bump stock story, and we've had some other things to talk about too, but I think the bump stock story, the bump stock case is incredibly relevant, obviously far beyond the bump stock itself. And that is that, again, when the whole thing started, a lot of people just shook it off. Who cares? But you're talking about a case that's going to, I mean, if we're victorious, and I'm going to say we, even though I'm not in the courtroom. Aren't we lucky I'm not in the courtroom? If we're victorious here, as you said, it affects not just a bump stock, but it has a profound effect on limiting what these agencies can do by fiat. And I don't think it's always understood at the beginning how important these cases are, even when they appear to be things on the fringes. We've lost our rights. I'm in my 60s, brother. We've lost our rights incrementally, one bite at a time. And at some point, and one of the things I'm proud of you guys doing is we've got to draw a line in the sand and say, this far you went, no further. In fact, we're going to take some of that back. And so when the bump stock happened and you guys jumped on it, I was very happy that you did, because so many people poo-pooed it. And now we get to the end of it and we say, okay, gee, this was a great idea. What? Who'd have thunk it? Right? And so, you know, I'm very grateful that you did. Listen, let's talk about a couple of other things. You mentioned October. I think the New York SCOTUS case, oral arguments coming up with that in October as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. October or November. We're not the lead ones on this case, but we're very excited to be part of it. We have an amicus in this case. And, you know, again, this has huge implications for gun rights everywhere. The lower courts have been ignoring the Second Amendment, ignoring the Heller decision of 2008. And that has emboldened a lot of localities like New York City to ignore our Second Amendment rights. And that's really the essence of this case. New York City, if you're a resident there, they can deny your right to carry a gun for protection, even if you have a clean record. It doesn't matter. You know, one of the plaintiffs in this case has had his home broken into several times, and yet the city said, nope, you don't have a special need for self-protection. I mean, it's incredible. You shouldn't have to prove that, that your name is Jason Bourne or something, and that people are after you before you can get a permit, because we have a God-given right to protect ourselves. And, you know, so that's one aspect of what we're dealing with in New York City. I think the other aspect that's particularly frustrating is the huge double standard. Because if your name is Howard Stern, or you're a famous sports star, I mean, you can get a permit. Or if you have a lot of money and you can lavish the officer who's approving your application with vacations. In some cases, we've seen prostitutes and cash. I mean, it's really corrupt. But then you can get a permit. You know, the system in New York City is the ultimate in corruption and double standards. But again, you know, Joel, and you know this, and I know you know this, our rights come from God, not the government. That's what our founding fathers said, and they were right. And what New York City is doing is an infringement. So, you know, we are really hoping that the Supreme Court is going to set things right. And this is not only going to benefit a lot of states, it'll benefit a lot of other court decisions, like ones that we're involved with in other areas like bump stocks and others. So as I mentioned before, there's now 21 states that have constitutional carry. So permitless carry. You don't have to ask for permission, don't have to get fingerprinted, don't have to get a background check. It is your right, you know, like we were talking about earlier, a God-given right. You have that right to protect yourself, and you shouldn't have to have a bureaucrat be in the position of approving you or denying you for any God-given right that we have, no matter what it is, but certainly something so fundamental like the protection of life. And I mean, let's face it, we've seen over the years tremendous abuses under the quote-unquote may issue system. We've even seen abuses under the shall issue system. Sometimes it's unintentional, like I think of, let's say with COVID and the huge backlogs that were occurring. So it may not be a despicable somebody's trying to stop people from getting firearms. But see, they never should be in that position in the first place. And that's the whole point. There's always going to be problems if you have this system where, you have a God-given right to do something, and yet now there's somebody else who's getting to decide whether you actually get to exercise it or not. I mean, that happened to Martin Luther King Jr. in 1956. His home had been bombed. He went to get a concealed carry permit, and he was denied. There was nothing in his background that should have denied him. It was obviously racial, political, call it whatever you want. But see, that's terrible. So kudos to states like Arizona and the 20 other states like Arizona, where honest citizens can get guns in these states without getting permission. And you know what? What's interesting, the safest 5 states in the country, Joel, are permitless carry states. So see, guns actually make people safer. Go figure, right? Isn't that what we've always been saying? But, the most unsafe places in this country are that way because they discourage people from owning or carrying guns.
Yeah, what's the old saying? I carry a gun because I can't carry a cop in my pocket.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how it works. All right. So if in California, I don't know if you know it or not, in California, we actually have a Second Amendment sanctuary county. And I'm embarrassed, and I got to apologize to the people in that county. I can't think of which one it is, but it's up in the northern part of California, and I feel stupid that I don't know. If I can come up with it afterwards, I'll put it I'll put a little graphic in front of me so I can tell you which one it is. And then Kern County Gun Owners is trying to turn Kern County into a Second Amendment sanctuary. So the Second Amendment sanctuary movement has even reached. It's left the United States and it's entered the People's Socialist Republic of California. Can you comment on that? I mean, I think it's marvelous that these county supervisors and county sheriffs are saying, we're not going to comply with this nonsense.
So don't let me forget to talk about a case that we've been involved with on this, but just as a general backdrop first, over 60% of the localities in this country have declared themselves to be Second Amendment sanctuaries. This is very exciting. 13 states have done so. Now, what's interesting about that is at the start of this year, January 1st, 2021, there were only 4 Second Amendment sanctuary states, only 4. There was actually 11 immigration sanctuary states. But because of Joe Biden, if there's one thing that you can be thankful to Joe Biden for, it's that he's lit a fire under good people who have now said, you know what, we need to do something about this. And so 9 states have become Second Amendment sanctuaries this year, bringing it up to a total of 13 in toto. So we actually now have more Second Amendment sanctuaries than there are immigration sanctuary states. And by the way, states like Missouri are even taking it further. This has been pretty exciting. Police agencies are cutting ties with federal task forces. They're pulling officers off these federal task forces. The governor and the AG, the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, sent a letter to the Department of Justice, said that they would fight Biden's gun control tooth and nail. It's direct quote, tooth and nail. I mean, is that not awesome? And, I kind of love their cheekiness. The governor and the attorney general even went and pointed out Biden's hypocrisy, because Biden, here he's rescinding the executive orders by Trump that prevented funds from going to sanctuary cities for immigration. This is what this letter points out. But then the Biden administration gets upset when a state says that they're a sanctuary for the Second Amendment. So you see, there is a double standard, a huge double standard here. It's to paraphrase a talk show host here in the D.C. area, if anti-gun liberals didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all.
They would have no standards at all. And by the way, you can mention his name. Who was it?
That's Chris Plant.
There you go. Okay. Well, if you haven't listened to his show and you're in that area, please do. November 2022 is not that far away. How important is that election to our Second Amendment rights?
Huge. It is. I mean, if we lose ground in that election, it's going to be Katie bar the door. We're not going to be able to protect the filibuster, and Congress will be ramming through gun control right and left. I can tell you, Gun Owners of America is going to be very active. In the last elections, we were very active. We spent over $1 million. And this is amazing. We did not lose one race where we were trying to get pro-gun congressmen reelected. Not one. I mean, that's a phenomenal statistic. So I really think we're already on the upswing. And by the way, we also helped elect a lot of good challengers as well that others in the gun community at the time weren't necessarily getting behind, but people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, they've just been rock stars for the Second Amendment. But yeah, it's not that far away, the November elections of next year. And you know, what's interesting is anti-gun Democrats are worried. Polls, you know, we were talking about crime. Well, polls are showing that increased numbers of people are concerned with crime. And that's not an issue that has historically broke in favor for Democrats when people are concerned with crime. Nor is banning guns a winning strategy. And Bill Clinton can tell you all about that. After the 1994 election, when he lost control of the Congress for the first time in a generation, Democrats lost control of the Congress. Several times, Clinton said it was because of gun control that a lot of congressmen and senators lost their seats. I think what we're seeing is there's probably going to be a lot of electoral retaliation against anti-gun Democrats. Of course, that's almost repeating yourself when you say that, because I realize there's anti-gun Democrats in the hustings. You know, we've got some as members, but in Congress, the blue dogs are gone. They don't exist anymore. If you have a D after your name, they're coming after our gun rights. And that's just a fact. I mean, Pelosi helped to purge. She specifically wanted to purge the Democrat Party there in the Congress of any of the blue dog Democrats. And so I think that's why we're seeing such a concerted effort right now amongst Biden, congressional Democrats, to get as much gun control as they can, because they do see the writing on the wall that the next election is not going to be favorable for them. But here's the problem for them, Joel. If you pass legislation, it can be much harder to undo that, because you either have to, pass legislation repealing it or spend thousands upon thousands of dollars in the court to get it struck down. On the other hand, if it's just an executive decree, live by the executive action, die by the executive action. In other words, the next president can just come in and undo it all, because it's not legitimate law. So everything that Biden is doing right now, all we have to do is get a good president in next time, 2024, and it's all getting repealed.
I want to take you back real quick, if I may, because you asked me to remind you about a case that you're involved in with regard to sanctuaries, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, this is a case out of Oregon where I think it's, and I'm forgetting the county. I think it's Columbia County, but don't hold me to that. But anyway, a county in Oregon passed through referendum. In other words, the voters passed it, a Second Amendment sanctuary law. Great, good news. Well, the city council didn't, or the county board of supervisors didn't like that. So they enacted their own version to replace what the voters had done, and then they invited the courts to come examine if their what they had just passed was constitutional or not. But they were specifically trying to torpedo it. I mean, this is really dirty what they were doing. Anyway, every town, of course, Every Town for Gun Safety, Bloomberg's group, jumped in support, or I should say in support of what the supervisors were doing against the Second Amendment sanctuary. We jumped in favor of keeping it. And of course, we were helping the local state group as well, or the Oregon Firearms Federation, which is a great organization. But within the last 2 weeks, we had a decision in that case, and the good guys, the Davids, beat the Goliath. Bloomberg and all his billions of dollars lost in court. And so that Second Amendment sanctuary law is standing, but we felt that was very important to take a stand there, because if they had lost there, we could see that could become a precedent where they're going to start using that to strike down Second Amendment sanctuary ordinances all around the country. And as I said earlier, over 60% of the country now, people are living in Second Amendment sanctuaries, and that's exciting news. So we wanted to kind of nip it in the bud, this backdoor attempt to bring it all down.
Erich, we've talked a lot about a lot of stuff. I had my list. I even emailed it to you. But I want to give you a chance to add anything that maybe we didn't talk about. Is there something we should have addressed that I didn't have on my list?
Well, I think just to circle back and talk about what's still pending. And, because if people just have been watching this and now here we are at the end, I just want to leave this with you. We need to speak out against these executive actions, the homemade gun ban, the pistol-braced firearm ban. We need to, the first one that I just mentioned, the comment period ends August 19th. The second one expires in September. So please go to our website at gunowners.org. If you're not getting our email alerts, by the way, you can sign up there. They're free. Please do that so that you can be informed on these issues. But they're on our website. I mean, we make it very easy with just a couple clicks. You can sound off. We want tens of thousands. We would love to have hundreds of thousands of people speaking out in opposition so that we can have another victory like we did, I mentioned earlier, like with the green tip ammo, where it's just so overwhelming, they end up withdrawing their regulation.
There's another aspect to that, and that is that politicians operate on polls, it seems, particularly the Democratic ones. And Biden's poll numbers are tanking. Kamala's are tanking. And in the light of that, they probably don't want them to tank further. And so if there's enough opposition to these two things, it's quite possible that politics might intervene. So yes. I think it's important that we don't assume a defeat. Let's instead fight for a victory. If you don't fight, then you just guaranteed a defeat. Erich, thank you very much for coming on the show again. I know you're extremely busy. I really appreciate you dedicating. Look, we've been on an hour here almost. So I thank you so much for that time. I really do appreciate it.
Well, and as always, thank you so much for having us on. You're a good friend, Joel, and just thank you for what you're doing, keeping people informed. And so thank you for making us a part of that.
It's absolutely my pleasure. You be safe, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
All righty. Thank you very much again for watching the entire interview. I'm super grateful that you did. I do urge you to support Gun Owners of America. There will be a link in the description. There will be also some additional interviews coming up later this month. I'm hoping that Rick Travis will join us on GunGuyTV Crew for our monthly 2A conference. If you'd like to be part of that, you're going to want to join GunGuyTV Crew. You can do that in the link in the description. And we've got some other cool stuff coming up here on GunGuyTV. So if you haven't already subscribed and shared and clicked the little bell and all that kind of stuff, please do. Have a great week. Thank you very much for all of your support. And wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.